What rights do we have? What rights was Paul willing to give up for the gospel? What freedoms are we willing to sacrifice in love of God and neighbor? Am I not an apostle? Am I not free? Have I not seen Jesus Christ our Lord? Aren't you my work in the Lord? Paul was free to eat meat offered to idols and also take a salary from the Church of God in Corinth. What proof was there of his apostolic authority? If I'm not an apostle to others, yet doubtless I am to you. For the seal of my apostleship are you in the Lord. Like a seal fixed to a document, the proof of Paul's ministry was those who turned to God. Who seals our freedom from this world of sin? Was Paul ready to give an answer to those who questioned his authority? My answer, or apology, to them that do examine me is this: how do we give an answer to defend our faith? The Greek word apologia gives us apologetics, defending the faith. Did Paul have a right to food and drink? Have we not power or right to eat and drink? Paul begins with a basic human right that all gospel preachers have, to eat and drink. That is, at church expense. What about the simple right to get married to a Christian wife? Haven't we power to lead about a sister, a wife, as well as other apostles and the brethren of the Lord and Cephas? We know that Peter was married to a Christian woman, a sister. With whom did Paul work closely as a fellow apostle? Or I only and Barnabas, haven't we power to forbear working? Apparently only Barnabas and Paul supported themselves among the apostles. This comradely comment is the only mention of Barnabas after he and Paul had clashed. Are soldiers, grape growers, and dairy workers justly compensated? Who goes to warfare any time at his own charges? Who plants a vineyard and doesn't eat the fruit thereof? Or who feeds a flock and doesn't eat of the milk of the flock? How do these three professions compare to a preacher of the gospel? Are there relevant principles in the Old Testament? Do I say these things as a man, or doesn't the law say the same also? What principle from the law did Paul use to cover a pastor's living expenses? For it's written in the law of Moses, you shall not muzzle the mouth of the ox that treads out the corn. Does God take care for oxen only? God does care for animals, but the principle is much broader. What higher application of the law does Paul address? Or does he say it altogether for our sakes? No doubt this is written, that he that ploughs should plough in hope, and he that threshes in hope should be partaker of his hope. A farmhand and a sharecropper's pay often includes part of the harvest. What hope is Paul talking about? Spiritual or physical things? If we've sown to you spiritual things, is it a great thing if we shall reap your carnal things? Every minister needs some physical things, yet did Paul use this right in Corinth? Why did he choose to endure hunger, thirst, and other hardships? If others be partakers of this power over you, are not we rather? Nevertheless, we've not used this power, but suffer all things, lest we should hinder the gospel of Christ. Under these circumstances, Paul decided that taking a salary might hinder his mission. What was the normal case under the Levitical priesthood? Don't you know that they which minister about holy things live or eat of the things of the temple? And they which wait at the altar are partakers with the altar. Part of the sacrificial system involved eating. Paul teaches another principle from the Old Testament. How does this apply to ministers in most cases? And who ordained this? Even so has the Lord ordained that they which preach the gospel should live of the gospel. Where did Jesus ordain this? Why did Paul choose to make a personal sacrifice here? But I've used none of these things, neither have I written these things that it should be so done to me. For it were better for me to die than that any man should make my glorying or rejoicing void. Paul chose the bivocational life, the right to preach the gospel without charge, so that he could have the joy of giving. He made tents so that he could care for himself, his companions, and also the weak. For though I preach the gospel, I have nothing to glory or brag of, for necessity is laid upon me. Yes, woe is it to me if I preach not the gospel. In Greek, glorying can mean both positive rejoicing and negative bragging. Paul uses it both ways, saying he rejoices that he can be bivocational, but he doesn't boast about preaching, because he preaches out of obligation. What is Paul's sense of his calling? What sense of calling do we have? For if I do this thing willingly, I have a reward. But if against my will, a dispensation of the gospel is committed to me. Paul rejoices in his bivocational ability to preach the gospel without charge, not needing a salary. What is my reward then? Truly that when I preach the gospel, I may make the gospel of Christ without charge, that I abuse not my power in the gospel. Though free from everyone's expectations, Paul chose not to demand his rights and so diminish the gospel. What did Paul choose? For though I be free from all men, yet I've made myself a servant to all, that I might gain the more. Why is this a problem? A salaried minister serves a church, but a missionary is free to go where the gospel is needed. Paul's circumstances allow him the privilege of reaching the lost, rather than mostly preaching to the saved. What was Paul's motive? And to the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might gain the Jews. To them that are under the law, as under the law, that I might gain them that are under the law. Being all things to all people is hard work. Why would we try? To them that are without law, as without law, being not without law to God, but under the law to Christ, that I might gain them that are without law. To gain means what to Paul? To the weak I became as weak, that I might gain the weak. I made all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. Christ came not to condemn the world, but to save it. To save some is a result of what message? And this I do for the gospel's sake, that I may be partaker thereof with you. Paul's humble attitude is to be a fellow partaker with the brethren. What encouragement can we take from Paul's example? Don't you know that they which run at a race run all, but one receives the prize? So run, that you may obtain. What prize are we seeking? And every man that strives for the mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible. We seek the crown of life. Is Paul speaking of spiritual discipline? To what purpose? I therefore so run, not as uncertainly, so fight I not as one that beats the air. There is a purpose for spiritual discipline. What must a preacher of the gospel watch out for? But I keep my body under and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I've preached to others, I myself should be a castaway. We have many rights and privileges, especially as children of God. However, we often choose not to fully utilize our rights for a variety of reasons. For peace, for the weak, and for the gospel. What privileges are we willing to give up for the gospel's sake?